Now to one of our lead stories this evening. A new publication by the World Inequality Report 2026 has revealed some staggering global disparities. Fewer than 60,000 people, just 0.001% of the world's population, control 3 times as much wealth as the entire bottom half of humanity. The top 10% earn more than the remaining 90%, while the poorest half captures less than 10% of global income. Eliza Herbert unpacks the situation as it stands.
This world is home to over 8 billion people. And yet just 0.001% of the population, less than 60,000 people, owns 3 times more wealth than the poorest half. That's according to the latest World Inequality Report for 2026, whose authors say the situation demands urgent attention.
Around the world, living standards are stagnating for many, while wealth and power are even more concentrated at the very top. Independent research is under threat in places where academic freedom once seemed secure. These developments are connected. Rising inequality undermines trust, weakens our democracies, and fuels discontent.
The data compiled by over 200 researchers found that the top 10% of the global population's income earners earn more than the other 90% combined, while the poorest half of the global population captures less than 10% of the total global income. It's a pattern echoed in nearly every part of the world, where the benefits of globalisation and economic growth flow onto only a small portion of wealth hoarders, as many struggle to achieve stable livelihoods. The regional disparities are also immense. For example, the average monthly income in sub-Saharan Africa is about 13 times less than in North America and Oceania. Women still only earn around 30% of global labour income, but work more hours when factoring in unpaid labour. The poorest half of people are also going to be disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis, despite accounting for only 3% of carbon emissions, compared to the 77% of the top 10%.
Well, we now have the opportunity to speak to one of the report's authors. In fact, its main author, Ricardo Gomez-Carrera, economist and researcher at the World Inequality Lab. Ricardo, thank you for joining us. This is staggering, I have to say. 0.01% of people earning 3 times the wealth of the entire bottom half of humanity. We are destined for some kind of collapse here.
Well, yes. First of all, Jean-Emile, thank you for having me. And yes, the results of our report are quite striking. First of all, I would like to say something related to the report and the work that we do at the World Inequality Lab. Our work, this report is based on the research of more than 200 researchers and social scientists from all over the continent. And we, in the World Inequality Lab, manage the World Inequality Database, that it's a database that can measure inequality from the whole distribution, from the bottom to the top, in several countries for several years. And that is how we can make this kind of report, where we can measure inequality in several domains. But yes, what you say is one of our most striking findings is that the population that could fit in a stadium, less than 100,000 individuals, own more wealth, 3 times more wealth than half of humanity combined.
60,000 people.
60,000 people.
It just beggars belief. We saw in that report the regions which are worst affected. Are there any countries which are actually trying to bridge the gap quite actively, and there are other countries which are really falling behind and could learn a thing or two?
Well, another important finding of the report, even if inequality is increasing at a very fast and alarming pace, an important finding of the report is that we see that redistribution policies are quite effective in reducing inequality. So public investment in education, in health, they have these very good traits to reduce inequality, and not just in the short term. The people benefited with more investment in education. They themselves can have higher incomes, but they can transmit these benefits to their own children. So we see that education and health are very good ways to reduce inequality. And we see that there are some countries that are doing policies that can reduce inequality. However, we see that inequality overall is increasing, and more extreme inequality.
So in terms of an immediate lesson that countries need to take, obviously you can't have a blanket approach for everyone. Everyone has their own problems. But what is the first board of advice that you would give to a country trying to bridge the gap? My own South Africa is the worst in the world. What would you say to the leaders there?
Well, it's alarming that we see that in the past years, public expenditure in education and health is decreasing. And this is, as I said, one of the main ways to reduce inequality. So I would urge governments to increase the investment in education and health. And also, we see that other mechanisms that are producing this high concentration in some hands is the lack of progressivity at the top. So redistributive policies are effective when I talk about cash transfers and investment in education and health, but it's also quite effective to keep progressivity. So if you have more money, if you are richer, you should pay more taxes. And we see that progressivity is collapsing at the very top of the distribution.
The wider the gap, the more political and social instability. But is there a direct correlation to inequality and violence?
We see that the wealthiest have a very high influence on what you say is a very important question. But I want to stress also that another mechanism is that the wealthiest have a very large influence on the politics. And they manage the agendas and target the political agendas to what they consider the most important. So if they are affected by violence or by other things in the society or economy, they will redirect the political agenda to those subjects.
What about a global wealth tax? I mean, is that something, I think you've touted it in there, about 3% on the top earners, and that would really cover the shortfall. Is that a realistic solution?
Well, that would be an amazing solution. And first of all, let me say that it's very important to invest in education and health, as I already stressed, and a powerful way to fund these investments in education and health could be from having potential revenues from the people who are not currently paying their taxes. So if people at the top are not currently paying their taxes, and we would be able to tax just below 100,000 individuals, we would have enough revenue, the world would have enough revenue to cover all the expenditure that is now made in Sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia.
That's incredible. But are we at a tipping point?
We're very close.
What will that mean for society?
I mean, we need to take a decision. Either we continue in this track and wealth concentration keeps being in the hands of a few, or we take this matter into our own hands, and we, with political participation and political will, transform institutions and try to reduce inequality.
Just a final question. I don't suppose we've ever been this severe in human history. If we can just call on lessons of the past for an immediate fix, is that even anything that we can possibly comprehend, or is it going to take years and years and years to undo this?
Well, we've seen from the past experience, for example, the years after the Second World War, that there was very high economic growth, very high productivity, and there were very low levels of inequality. So we can learn from the past. We can reduce inequality. All we need is political will.
All that political will. Let's try rally the troops. Ricardo Gomez-Carrera, thank you so much. And that's after his report outlining some really stark inequality in the world going forward.